Well, how long are we waiting Oh, it's fascinating. About 5 minutes.
Let me go sit down. Are you treating me? When I hear are you treating? Look, he just smiling. He's not gonna treat me.
Weather breaks, this kind of got to go for somebody gets killed. Yeah, so we shouldn't be more than 7 quarters. That's what it is.
Good evening, everyone. Take your seats, please. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I am your Supervisor Arnold Bailey, hosting with Prince William County. Hello. It is an honor to be here with you this evening. I'm thankful that you came out. I just asked this group if they had dinner, and someone said, "Why, are you paying?" So I haven't had dinner either, so we'll talk about that later. But this is a very important evening. I want to thank those of you who are streaming with us this evening. Thank you for taking time outside of your evening to get stationary to sit down and listen to the presentation this evening. This presentation is very important in terms of providing an update, if you will, to all citizens within Prince William County, but specifically those of you who live in Potomac Shores, on Possum Point, and Cherry Hill. Very important that line of communication is continually open, and we have a discussion about our wonderful, illustrious Possum Point. And so I wanted to, all of you have your agenda, but I wanted to bring forward, I'm very honored that I have my friend, my colleague, my chair with me this evening, Ms. Ann Wheeler. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to her first. Thank you, Ms. Wheeler.
Good evening, and thank you, Supervisor Bailey. It's my pleasure to join you all tonight for tonight's Possum Point Town Hall. I especially want to thank Supervisor Bailey for hosting this evening's event and for having stakeholders on site to address questions that have been plaguing the residents of the community. To the county staff and attendants, thank you for always making yourselves accessible and willing to lead a helping hand to our community members. But most importantly, I wish to thank our Potomac Magisterial District Supervisor for viewing the closure of Dominion's Possum Point Power Station on Quantico Creek as a matter which spans beyond the Potomac District boundaries, but is very important to the Potomac District, obviously, and also impacts the lives of every resident of our county. I couldn't agree more. Tonight's event is a chance to receive an update from our staff and answers to some of your questions. I, like you, am excited to be here and thank each of you in advance for your continued engagement on this issue as we all seek to mitigate impacts to the health and safety of our family, our friends, our land, and our waterways. As noted by Supervisor Bailey, actually, I don't know if you noted, but this evening's event is being recorded in the back, so you'll be able to share tonight's material with your friends, family, neighbors who are unable to attend this evening. So thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the continued dialogue and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and again to our wonderful staff in the back. We have the greatest staff in Prince William County, always ready, willing, and able to take care of our needs and our wants, and sometimes our desires of what we want to do creatively. And so I want to acknowledge other stakeholders. Mr. Elijah Johnson, our acting CXO, is here with us this evening. We appreciate your support always for serving the citizens. Thank you so much for being here. Yes. So I'm going to, you have your agenda before you. Sorry to start a little bit late, but I was trying to wait to see if other residents were going to come. This is the third of many that we will be having as we work forward towards a positive resolution for this concern. We have with us this evening Ms. Yolanda Green. As some of you, Ms. Green, you're going to come forward. Some of you will know that as we approach, as this issue became more prevalent to me in the district, the citizens' voices are very important to me and anything that we do, both across the county, but specifically in the Potomac district as we serve. And so what we decided to do in the office was to create a task force that was a culmination of citizens that was in the area so we could get input from the community. And so as we did so, we started out with 11 members that represented the entire community, but our chair was Ms. Yolanda Green, who actually lives on Possum Point. And so Ms. Green, if you would come forward now and give us the input from that task force, I would appreciate it. Ms. Yolanda Green.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and I'm glad to see my neighbors, so it's good to see you all. So I can't read with my glasses on, so sorry. So the task force met, and my co is Jacob in the back. But we had an opportunity to discuss, we had an opportunity to tour, and we have had great discussions back and forth. And so what we wanted to share with you was what we are requesting as a task force. So the first thing is to treat the water prior to pumping it back into Quantico Creek. The second is to continue to investigate the barge option that we are looking to have to be able to move that recyclable ash to the Charles County area where they can recycle it. So that was the second thing that we asked. And then if we cannot do it by barge and not able to get all the grants that we've heard are opportunities, we would move forward with asking to have it moved by rail. We've also asked that when Dominion decides to bring in dirt and rock and et cetera, that we are notified in advance on the road, because the last time we were not. And as I could see many times, we were running and jumping into the ditch to avoid the trucks coming down. So we have asked that we be notified, and so they said that they would do that. The last thing is that we would like to see the area to become to continue to belong to Dominion, but we would like it to see it as a park. We have talked about it being greened up with grass, having a running track, a walking track, to be able to have about at the max 8 parking spaces. We don't want this to be a parade or a place where a lot of people come, but just a nice place where people can walk and feel comfortable. And then also look at having renewable energy by having solar panels and et cetera. So those are the things that we have requested and asked that they continue to investigate and work on. So we continue to work with them and talk with them as we continue to have discussion as we move forward. But these are the things that we've requested and have talked about. And if you want to see any of the members of the task force, I would like to ask you to please stand. And then Jacob's in the back. So thank you so much for your continued participation. There's one more, but they're just not here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. So there are more members of the task force. They're just not here this evening for various reasons, traveling or just couldn't make it this evening. But as I mentioned, originally there were 11 from different areas of the community. So so you will know as your supervisor, I never had a problem that I didn't like. And as you know, as an example, and I make reference to this all the time, with the Montclair drainage pipe, Montclair, all of you are familiar with that. It's a problem that existed since 1993, and we solved that. And so that's what we're working towards, as Madam Chair had mentioned. We're working towards a resolution, a win-win with this opportunity. And so I'm very fortunate as we, and the board is very fortunate as we work forward towards a resolution that we have impeccable talent that will help us to understand the ins and outs in the areas that they know and the areas that we are not equipped with to make sure that we're doing the right things from a legality standpoint as well as environmental standpoint. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my cohorts that always help me with problems like this, as well as the rest of the board. Mr. Tom Smith is the Director for Public Works, and Rebecca Horner, who's Deputy Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bailey and Chair Wheeler. Good to see you. My name again is Tom Smith. I'm the Director of Public Works. I've been involved in the Possum Point Coal Ash project for probably at least 6, maybe 7 years. Rebecca Horner, Deputy County Exec and Acting Planning Director, is here as well. And Jenny Bader from our Risk and Wellness Office has been helping as well to review groundwater reports and deal with the health and safety aspects of the project. So we are engaged in this project and have been for a number of years. I'm going to go through a brief presentation, if you may. You can go forward. Again, this is the directive that Supervisor Bailey gave back in the end of May, and you can see what's underlined there. We've been asked as staff to coordinate and facilitate a distribution of information and keep you as a community informed of the activities that are going on. So this is, as Supervisor Bailey said, one of several meetings we'll be having just to let you know where we're at, where the county is at, and ultimately where Dominion is at as well in the overall process. Next slide. How many were at the April 4th Town Hall meeting that Dominion presented? Okay, I'm going to briefly just show some of those slides so you can get familiar with what they said. These are exact duplicates of the slides they presented on April 4th. This is an aerial photo of the Possum Point power plant. You see that in the foreground, the lower left is the power plant itself. The big greenish looking pond is what we call Pond D, Pond Delta, which is where approximately 4 million cubic yards of ash are currently located that must be removed in accordance with Virginia statutes and Virginia law. Next slide. Just another view of it. The pond, the area you see at the bottom of the slide was an area that was full of ash. That was called Pond E, and Dominion has removed all the ash from Pond E as well as ponds all the way up on the top right of the slide, which was A, B, and C, and they placed all the ash in Pond D where you see the water. So one of the main issues, and the first step that Dominion must do is to remove and treat all the water in that pond. Next slide. So these are the options that Dominion presented at the last town hall meeting. Options they considered, and you can see them: an on-site landfill, recycling of ash, removing the remainder by rail, and recycling of ash, remaining removal by truck, and all removal of ash to another off-site landfill. And you can see some of their relative costs involved, as well as the various issues with transportation, technology permitting, and as well, both like local and state environmental permitting. Next slide. This is their proposal, and Dominion has stated at the meeting that the preference is the on-site landfill. This is their rendering of an on-site landfill. Again, all the ash would have to be removed. Well, the water treated first, all the ash removed, and this new landfill constructed, and then the ash placed into this landfill. So next slide. So this was a summary. Again, this is the Dominion slide from the last town hall meeting of their recommended option at the time is to build an on-site landfill. And again, this landfill would meet all the requirements, be double-lined, and minimize impacts to the environment through all the different regulations they must do in accordance with the State Department of Environmental Quality. So next slide. Again, this is another rendering of where that landfill would go. It would be to the this slide would be actually to the west of the current Pond D. And you can see generally their footprint and how they would move trucks. The trucks would all stay on site to move the ash from the current Pond D location to the new landfill site, which would be adjacent right next door. Okay, next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Warner. She's going to talk about Dominion's request for a public facilities determination and give you some information about that process.
Thank you, Tom. As Tom said, my name is Rebecca Horner. I am acting planning director. I was also formerly the planning director. I'm also deputy county executive for community development, so public works and planning office both are within my portfolio of agencies that I work with. I've been with the county for about 8.5 years and love Prince William County. It is so unique, has so many wonderful things about it, even has a power plant. And you know, that presents some very unique challenges, but also some unique opportunities, and hopefully we're in that point in which we can start to realize some of those opportunities as we move forward. And we're very lucky that we have county elected leadership that is zealously advocating for the community. So Tom and I have been working together through this process, and one point of the process was the public facilities determination. And I thought I would give you just a little bit of background on what that means for those who may not be as familiar with it. We in the planning world have a lot of really technical things that we do that you know, we kind of bury ourselves in these ordinances and laws, and it can be really confusing for everybody else who has a real life and doesn't have to bury their head in these ordinances. So the Virginia Code has a specific code section that talks about public facilities and how local jurisdictions can address these public facilities. And it's a very, very limited review. So the Virginia Code really only gives localities the ability to look at 3 things when we're considering a public facility. And that is location, where it's located and whether or not it's appropriate, character, you know, how it functions, and extent, how large, you know, the scope of it. And so when we have a brand new public facility that maybe never existed before, a fire station, a school, these are all considered public facilities, an extension of sewer into an area of the rural lands or agricultural lands. We look at those 3 criteria to determine whether or not it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan or not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And interestingly, this is actually the only action that the Planning Commission has authority to make. It can be appealed to the board, but it is the one authority that the Virginia Code has given to the Planning Commission. So before an application for a public facilities comes forward, we call that a PFR for short. These are our acronyms out in the DC area. We look at whether or not there's an exemption that again is specifically noted in the Virginia Code. And so if there's an existing public facility, if that facility existed on the site already, and this is an expansion, a small expansion of an existing facility, these are examples of things that the Virginia Code says would be exempt from a PFR review. So when Dominion came forward to the planning office, to me as acting director, they asked us a very specific question. They said, if we put a debris landfill, because that's how we define this in the code, in our zoning ordinance, and we put it in this specific location, they gave us the details, would it be exempt from the PFR process or not? And as you can see on this slide, Dominion has been around for a long time, and they have a long history, and they have requested public facility reviews in the past, and they also have some non-conforming uses. Those are uses or structures that predated our zoning regulations. And so they have rights that are given to them through the Virginia Code, again, that allow them to remain. So what we had to review was the permitting history. And it turned out, and I'm sure Dominion knew exactly all of this permitting history when they gave it to us, The request for the debris landfill is located where there's an existing PFR was already approved. So if you look back in the history between the 1986, 2000, and 2002 permit reviews that predate myself in the county, there had already been approvals for a debris landfill on this site. So that is what led to the determination that a public facility review, a PFR, that would go to the planning commission was exempt. It was exempt from going to the planning commission per the existing conditions on the site. And like I said, even if it had gone through that review, the review would have been very limited to that character, location, and extent. So there would not have been nearly the number of things that the community are interested in that the planning office could have even reviewed. And there's no method through the Virginia Code to allow for a conditioning or an enforcement of a condition of a public facility review. So often we will receive from the applicant a commitment letter and of different things that they'd be willing to do to try to mitigate any character, location, or extent impacts. But we actually have no legal right to enforce any of those. So that in a nutshell is the PFR process and what led us to the determination. And I know that probably isn't a very popular determination, but based on the law and the code and what we have the authority to do, that was the determination. But I think Tom is going to speak to opportunities. Like I said, I believe this is a point in which we have some opportunities to end up in a better place with our power plant, and Tom will talk about those through the rest of his presentation. And I'll be here to answer questions you might have when we get to that point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. If we could have the next slide there. So, just a couple of points. Dominion entered into an agreement with Prince William County a number of years ago when they were issued the water permit from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. The county had a separate agreement with Dominion that actually made the water permit more stringent. They agreed to some more stringent discharge requirements as part of that agreement. And within that agreement, it also stated that Dominion is going to work with the county on any future landfill design, any future proposal for doing an on-site design. So we have that in as a part of the agreement, so that will require Dominion, quote unquote, to work with us and to certainly listen to any comments the county or the task force has. And again, this is the directive that Supervisor Bailey gave to staff on May 24th. You can see what it says up there. It basically says that the county staff will engage Dominion in reviewing any permit application, reviewing any designs, consider the task force recommendations, and work very closely with Dominion to try to make whatever option they choose to minimize any impacts on certainly the neighborhood and the environment, of course. Next slide. So let me just talk a little bit about the process for approvals. Again, this code section, which was passed by the General Assembly, essentially says Dominion has ultimate responsibility to determine what options pursue, and consistent with that law, on-site landfilling to meet all current requirements is permitted. They do have a very rigorous permit process. They must go through, whether it's a landfill or any other option, from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality called DQ. They have very strict regulations, and as well as a requirement to advertise and have a public hearing, probably several public meetings during that whole process. Again, it must meet any option and any landfill must meet all current federal and state requirements, Virginia requirements. As well as Virginia is required to obtain any county permits. These are administrative permits. What I mean by that, they're issued by staff. They must meet all our local erosion and control standards, get a grading permit, meet requirements of stormwater management, and these are issued, again, by county staff, just like any other developer would come in for a permit. And again, as Rebecca said, Dominion is not required to obtain specific board approval to construct a new on-site landfill. Next one. So this is what the county will be doing. We'll be working with Dominion, looking at any applications for permits, any designs. We've been asked to come up with specific technical comments, and this is where we likely engage the task force as well as the community to understand your concerns on any submissions that Dominion would make to DEQ. DEQ is very much aware of the county's concerns. I am in constant discussion, contact with the DEQ permit writers, and we will work very closely with them as well to review the permits and submit comments. And again, as Yolanda said, we're very interested in what the long-term plans are for the site. And as part of their permit, they will submit what they call a closure plan and a long-term plan for maintenance. They will be required to maintain the site for at least 30 years, if not longer. And we will work in developing specific comments and requests for Dominion to look at long-term use of the site. And again, we want to make sure that no matter what option Dominion pursues, that it is done safely and will mitigate potential impacts to the community and, of course, long-term impacts to the environment. With that, I think we're going to open it up for questions for any staff that is here or for the supervisors who are here. So if you could raise your hand and speak real loud so we can, oh, you got a mic. Jacob has a mic. Raise your hand and Jacob will bring the mic.
My name's Ralph Gruen and I live on Possum Point Road. I didn't quite understand the very last point on the previous two slides, that the county doesn't have any direct say-so in the decision process, that it was all up to Virginia Power. One right before that.
I think, I know which point you're speaking to that Tom made. And I think what Tom meant was, in terms of the use as a landfill, all of our uses are regulated by our zoning ordinance. And like I said, our zoning ordinance defines a landfill as a public facility. So it brings us back to that public facility code section of the Virginia Code, which is 15.2-2232. So you can look that up. There's a whole section. So what Tom means when he says that is in terms of the determination of the use being permitted, because there was, and like I said, because there have been a history of permits issued by the county or non-conforming uses determinations on this exact location that they're proposing, it is exempt from the PFR by Virginia Code, as determined by the planning director. But where we do have input are the permitting processes with DEQ, and I believe that's what Tom was referring to. Now is the time that we're going to need to be submitting permits, and we have an opportunity as directed by the board to engage in that process, and that's where we're going to work with the community and the task force to help negotiate through that process with Dominion.
My name is Kelvin Noy, and I'm on Tweezer Court right off of Possum Point. Not a question, but maybe just a statement. I was hoping that you guys as a staff could do what you could to dissuade Dominion from using trucks to move stuff off of, or move out of the general area. So as we know right now, for the folks who live on Possum Point, they're actually, I think Prince William County, or Prince William Service Authority is actually doing utility work on the street right now, and we can see where it's close. They're doing one way in and one way out during the day, and that's a huge interruption. So if you guys can just dissuade them from using the truck option, and doing rail or barge, that would help us out tremendously.
Yes, thank you for that, and that has been communicated to Dominion over the last 3 years, basically. We understand the road issues. It's the only way in and out. So we've been asking, requesting, persuading Dominion, no matter what option we choose, don't truck everything out on the I mean, there's gonna be trucks, no matter what option, if they need supplies and things like that, but it'll be much, much less than a hauling out of the ash by truck. So yes, we understand that concern, and that definitely is one of the comments that we'll continue to bring up.
And Calvin, as I had mentioned before, when they get ready to bring things in, like dirt, rocks and stuff, they're supposed to notify us so that we can be prepared.
My name is Anthony Robinson. I live on Possum Point Road. And if Dominion gets to make the final determination, I mean, why are we wasting time? They're going to go the cheapest route possible. And that means they're going to be trucking as much of it out as they can, which means more truck traffic on Possum Point, more than we've had in the last 3 years. Then, when they get all this ash situated, they're going to build 190 foot high and 185 feet high berms up there. And where is that dirt going to come from? They don't have it on site. They're going to have to truck it in, which means even more truck traffic on Possum Point. And I think the residents of Possum Point have suffered enough. I mean, it's bad enough they dug the road up, to put the water lines in. They continue to dig the road up, put the water lines in. And now we're going to have to be activated with all these trucks for the next 10, 12 years. That's ridiculous. Yeah, how much can people tolerate? I think I've had enough.
Yeah, obviously we haven't seen final designs, cut fills, all that different things. Certainly while we're here, we believe we can influence Dominion on those issues. Whenever you build a landfill, if that's the choice, they have to dig a big hole. There'll be a lot of dirt they have to excavate, so it will be our desire that there'll be no importing of soil. They may have to import supplies, but they should be able to, I'm just giving my opinion until I see the design, we will encourage them as much as possible to get any on-site.
Even on the slides you showed, it showed the two berms at 190 feet and 185 feet.
Yeah,
They do not have that much on site. It's going to have to come from somewhere. They're not going to barge it in. They're not going to rail it in.
Yeah, we will monitor that, and I believe, there may be enough dirt on the site to do that. Again, we will.
I don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
And when the last time we were filling in A, B, C, and E, there was absolutely no police presence on Possum Point. The trucks flew in and out. I mean, I've had neighbors that had to jump out of the road from their mailboxes to keep from getting run over by these idiots. And I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, we understand your concerns, and certainly the police can get involved in the process.
Well, I tried that the last time.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we never saw
Supervisor
it.
Bailey has a pretty strong influence with the police.
Yeah, well,
And
believe me,
Ryder does
I've got her on speed dial.
Yeah, I got you.
I'll just add to that. Even though the use itself is determined to be allowed, some people might call it by right, but by prior permitting processes, we still have influence and an ability to work together with Dominion through the permitting process through DEQ, getting review of jurisdiction. So I do believe that it's very important for everybody to stay engaged in this process and think about the use determination, the landfill determination, PFR determination, separate from the solid waste permitting process, because I believe we have more influence over the solid waste permitting process than we would necessarily have ever had over the use decision. So I think it's very important to stay engaged and that there is a purpose for you to be involved in this at this point.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Eddie Hill, I'm a resident of Potomac Shores. I was at the last meeting, and I made the comment, I'm very, very happy to see that we have a number of people who actually live on Possum Point Road, because I think that their input is extremely, extremely important. What I would like to do is make sure I have each of your email address before I leave this evening. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with the Board of Directors of Potomac Shores. I know we have some members in here tonight, but they have not taken a position on this issue at all. And I think that in itself is extremely distressing. I don't need to scare anyone with all of the environmental problems that could take place with a 190 feet mound of contaminated material. If a tornado or a strong wind comes by and scatters this whole neighborhood with potash, this particular neighborhood, when finished, will be worth over $1 billion. And you can imagine what the damage would be if we don't properly handle the situation. Now, I know Dominion want to do things the cheapest way that they can. I can understand that, having served in corporate America most of my corporate life. The reason that I'm here tonight and the reason I want to connect with everyone is I'm presenting a proposal to the Board of Directors of Potomac Shores tomorrow that will ask for permission to use their waterfront property as a marina to load the potash onto barges. And being in construction, a good portion of my corporate life, I don't think building a marina will cost $350 million. That way we could not truck that ash down Possum Point Road. We could build a small road, maybe a mile long, to the dock site, and then transport this ash, get it completely out of the community, and save the residents of the community the trauma of living with that much ash for the rest of their lives next door. So I want to make sure that my proposal is heard by you guys, and as well as the committee. Make sure that I can give you a copy tonight. And I have contacted Biddle, who is the director, the developer of Potomac Shores. And I hope to hear what their attitude will be, and we haven't heard from them either, by the way, what their attitude will be for alternative solutions than what is being presented here. Thank you. You want to say anything, Gary?
Good evening. My name is Gary Hopkins. I'm a resident of Potomac Shores. Listening to Yolanda, I think there was originally 11 members on the task force. It sounds like right now there are not. And so I would ask Yolanda, that we fill all the positions on the task force, and I would invite and ask that if there are no residents from Potomac Shores on the task force, and I think there originally were, but they might not be now, I would ask that you replace those residents with residents from Potomac Shores so possibly you can hear the voice of Potomac Shores and ultimately the voice of the board of Potomac Shores. Thank you.
If I could just comment as you switch, the barge option, as Yolanda indicated, is a recommendation of the task force to have Dominion look at barge, and anything you can do to help with that process, looking at barge would be appreciated. I know Dominion has told me that they've looked at barge in the past. I don't know all the details, but it's certainly something that the task force believes should get another look, and I think we agree with that, obviously. So.
Good evening, Les Larson, also Potomac Shores. I wanted to pursue further this barge option. Has there been a detailed analysis and assessment of the costs of such an option? I noticed that just our neighbors in Occoquan do a lot of barge movement right next to their marina. And I don't know the details about what's involved or their costs, but I'm curious what work you and Dominion have done to determine what those costs are.
Yeah, again, this is an option that we're continuing to investigate. I have not seen specific costs that Dominion has done. They indicated that they have come up with costs, and we've asked them to look at that again through the, go ahead, Yolanda, if you want to say something.
So yes, we did have several discussions with it. They talked to the Maritime group. We talked to VDOT. We talked to several people when it came to that process. If I'm not mistaken, Jacob, it was like 1.1 billion, 1.41 billion or something to that nature. So it was a little bit more than the rail was. And we were looking at grants to try to offset some of that cost. The only problem is because of the timing of the project and the length of time it's taking, we can't solidify all those grants at the time, but we're continuing to look into it and bring all the folks to the table to talk more about it and make sure that we're on top of it. But we did go into it. They had some numbers, but we had some more updated numbers from when they originally put this proposal together. So we're continuing to work on it and looking at grants to offset it.
Federal grants?
Yes, federal grants, yes, working through VDOT Maritime.
Hi, I'm Jeff Prowitz. I'm actually across Quantico Creek in the Grand Park Shores neighborhood. And the first question, you mentioned that Dominion already secured a permit for landfill, correct?
No, they have not. They have not even submitted an application for landfill.
Then what's existing there?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's about the PFR.
Yeah.
Tom was too quick. Yes, in the past, they had a degree landfill on this site, and they had a series of determinations by the zoning administrator over the years that it was exempt from PFR because of the existing permitting. They also have a number of non-conforming uses because their uses date back so far that they predate our zoning ordinance.
So I assume, and I'm asking because I hadn't heard this directly, that non-conforming use applies to coal ash?
It actually could apply to any use that predated our zoning ordinance that regulated. We have a number, hundreds of non-conforming uses throughout. If the board decides they want to change the regulation, then it could make things non-conforming. Lots, structures, uses.
Okay, just curious because thinking landfill and toxic landfill could be a determining factor in the previous permitting, but it sounds like they thought about that.
Right, well, and we did, because obviously we also want to, especially as the planning office, we're really geared up to make sure that any use, structure, setback, any development related standard is meeting the board's adopted policies. But we also have limitations based on the Virginia code. So we have to evaluate both the board's adopted policies and ordinances and the Virginia code So in this particular case, obviously it was a very long history. We were very, very actively engaged with our county attorney's office in evaluating the state code. And I assure you that 6 ways from Sunday, we looked at different ways that we could get involved and try to mitigate issues and impacts, because that's really what we want to make sure we're doing, because we want to implement that board adopted policy to have a great community. But like I said, I think even though some people may be very disappointed with the PFR and use determination, we still have a lot of opportunities with the solid waste permitting. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to end up in a good place. We're negotiating, working with Dominion.
Okay, and one follow-up question, if I may. It's my understanding that one of the previous coal ash ponds was at least in part filled by backfill from dredging Quantico Creek. And I was wondering if that might supply an option for, instead of trucking in a bunch of dirt up and down the road, by dredging out Quantico Creek, which has obviously been backfilled by a bunch of industry upstream for a very long time. And I was wondering if that was considered as an option.
Tom may know whether or not it has been, but if it hasn't, we certainly can bring that up and discuss that with Dominion.
Yeah, this is the kind of input that really helps us. I mean, that is an option. I know Supervisor Bailey has talked about doing some dredging on Quantico Creek. There's a lot of environmental permits with dredging as well you need to get, but that is an excellent idea. And I think that's something we should talk to Dominion and the regulators about.
And there's certainly precedent, because apparently they did it on part of the creek already.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Hilda Barg, and I live on Cherry Hill. We've been fighting coal ash since 1970s. I remember when it rained down coal ash. We can't really talk so much about the past. I'm hoping that tonight we can at least get some ideas from the community about how we save the future for our children, the drinking water, the environment. We talk about the facilities review permit. It sounds like that's already a done deal. And they said the permit could be small projects. I don't consider this a small project. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a citizen with some common sense. And I like to say, I think it's a wonderful idea to look at the barge. There's dock there. Everything is really there, just that they would need just about to haul their way, except for maybe the road the gentleman talked about. Rail is another option, and that we need to seriously look at. When all of the coal was brought in to Possum Point, it came in on rail spur, which is still there. The coal came in on the spur. There's nothing that stops us from removing the ash and taking it out on the spur. I mean, they bought in the problem so they can take out the fix. I mean, it's just common sense here. Another thing I want to talk about, when they contaminated Quantico Creek, I never saw Dominion Power offer $1 to fix the damage they made there. The damage is still there, and that needs to be looked at, because I don't know if anybody's really looked at how much damage was done. And I love taking some of the, when you dredge Quantico Creek, which a group of us have been fighting for years to get done. But would they be filling in with more contamination? If they ran all of those millions of gallons of contamination, chemicals into the river, we certainly don't want to move it from the river over closer to where the children live, the families live. There's so much I know you know that there's so much for you guys to look at. And I know this is They talk about it's a shorter process to fill it, to leave it on site. We've waited a long time. So if it's 10 years instead of 8, what is 2 years to the health and welfare of our community? We have to look at this from all the sides, from all the options. I appreciate this meeting tonight and hearing from the county side. I appreciate Andrea Bailey and what she's been trying to do to work with Dominion Power. It's not an easy fix. They get to make the final decisions. It makes us citizens out here think, hey, it's a done deal. It's not a done deal until that happens. But my concern tonight that we remember, it's only about 700 or 800 feet from where the homes, some of those homes, the newer homes, the folks paid $800 to $1 million to buy. And we want to put a I think they said 37-story high pile of dirt. And then they want to make a parkland. Oh boy. So now we're going to have a dog park, a walking trail down on Possum Point. They want to give us something. Folks, they don't want to give us anything. They want to get rid of their problems. Please don't, and then we're going to have a trail and you're going to have 8 parking spaces. We got 400,000 people in this county. We got 5,000 living right around the park. It doesn't make sense. The only thing you could put there would be mountain climbing if someone didn't mind to climb on chemicals that could kill them. I lived there for all these years, folks, and I watched people die on Keys Ridge Road. 8 houses in a row. And guess what they all died from? They all died from cancer. Well, I don't want these children dying from cancer. You know what, folks? Your dog might die as well as your kids. So we got to just continue to work with this. And I do appreciate everything that's been done tonight. I realize Possum Point Road to me is not an option. I go visit my family that lives there. Sometimes you wonder if a truck would run over you just trying to get on the road. The road's not wide enough. The creek is filling in. So it's really not an option there. That's not my fight. My fight is to hope that you will be your fight, that you will do something about that. Leave us with a clean environment. Please, we don't need that trail there. They need to remove the problems that they caused. And so if it takes a couple years more, folks, please do it. Thank you.
And we do have one question from online. So give me 1 second. This is from Jessica Ortiz. Is there still going to be a residence survey planned for neighboring communities? And if so, what channel will be used to distribute?
I think that's your question.
Is there a residence survey plan for the neighboring communities? And if so, what channel will be used to distribute?
I didn't hear you say surveys. You can answer that via text. The answer to that is yes.
Yes. I'll answer via text in the chat.
Thank you. There is going to be a survey.
Great.
There's going to be a survey. Any more questions? Thank you.
My name is Jessica Owens, and I am a resident of Potomac Shores, and I live off of Scarlet Pine Road up in the Ryan Home section. And I just have comments regarding, I'm not an environmental expert, but I have comments regarding how foolish that I think that an on-site landfill will be. I am concerned that it is a part of a watershed, where the location is, it's a part of the watershed. I'm concerned about its proximity to the homes and to the school itself. I'm concerned about the proximity to the resource protection areas, the boundaries that are on their land and on our neighboring Potomac Shores land. And I'm concerned about the erodible soil and the fact that they're capping it in place with, they want to cap it in place with a double line liner. But knowing that, that whenever we have, say, Quantico Creek exercises, I can feel my windows shake. And I know that with erodible soils and the constant exercise that happen at Quantico, I don't think it's very, it's not a good thing to have a in-place landfill at that particular location of a watershed with a resource protection area with, that just seems like the worst possible place to have an unsafe landfill. And so that I would ask that whenever you do the review for the permitting, that it is at the strictest and highest level of permitting, and that all these factors are considered, because this is not just your normal, everyday rule, out of the way location. This is a prime location that has a lot of environmental impact factors. And if there's any sort of leak at all, that will be a huge issue for this particular area. And the fact that we would need some sort of accountability for them regarding the monitoring of an on-site capped landfill.
Yeah, I understand. Yes, all those issues will be looked at. I said to Supervisor Bailey, when it would be better that no ash was there at all. But unfortunately, over the years, they put 4 million tons of ash there. They got to do something with it. And yes, Dominion's going to pick the cheapest route, most likely, and that's why they're looking at an on-site landfill. But we will continue to monitor, look at, address all these issues, including the ones that you raised.
Hi, I'm Brent Colson. We live in Potomac Shores. I just wanted to make sure that any evaluation you make of an on-site, you look at the marine clay that is on here, that it would be built upon, because I lived on the next neck up at Leesylvania, and Hilda knows this, she'll remember. Leesylvania has had multiple landslides where the ground is unstable. It was directly behind my home. It was an acre that dropped 45 feet. So that's a big hole. Hilda remembers, we stood there looking at the big hole. It was a really bad situation. There's no reason to believe that can't happen on this peninsula, just like it did on Leesylvania, which is only a mile away. So I'd like to make sure that any evaluation of an on-site place it takes into consideration the instability of the ground here.
And one more question from online, from Terry King. What consideration has been given to any possible future detrimental effect and mitigation of the Grand Park Shores community across from Quantico Creek?
Yeah, let me, marine clay absolutely will have to be looked at. One gentleman asked about permitting. You know, when they got the permit for the current ash fill in around 1986, the regulations were very minimal. I was in the solid waste area for over 30 years with the county. Our first permit in 1969 was 1 page. It is now 2 volumes of requirements, regulations, tests. So yes, that has to be looked at, the stability of the fill. Obviously, the impacts to the community with dust, during windstorms, with any kind of water, with long-term impacts to creeks will all be looked at as part of the permit. Dominion will be required to have groundwater monitoring. They've already started monitoring, and they will continue to have to do that for a minimum of 30 years after they're finished. And so both the state and the county will be very much involved in the whole monitoring process. We're currently reviewing all the monitoring reports they've submitted so far. So, but the permitting process, the current permitting process right now is very, very rigid. I'll just say that. I know that's not going to convince you all that it's quote unquote safe, but we will do all we can to make sure it's safe if the Dominion pursues that option.
See if I can put it in here. Okay. We're going to move on to the next steps portion of the agenda. And I guess we didn't really speak very much about our backgrounds, but between Jenny Bader, Tom, and myself, and our team of environmental services and watershed management members, we have a lot of background in environmental resources. I myself, graduate degree in environmental planning with an emphasis in water resources planning and management. Tom's an engineer, and so we have a lot of fantastic education and experience in this, and so we will be putting all of that hard work into ensuring that we end up in a good place or better place. So in terms of next steps, I know the task force is continuing to meet, but I would encourage you to, as I said, continue to participate in this process and share your feedback. Tell your neighbors and your friends to share their feedback so that we can utilize that feedback as we're negotiating with Dominion and moving forward. Tom, do you want to speak to the next steps specific to the permit itself?
We are somewhat in a kind of waiting mode with Dominion. Obviously, the task force has submitted their recommendations. So, as Dominion prepares their permit, we will be commenting, reviewing each step of the way. To my knowledge, I haven't yet submitted a permit to the Department of Environmental Quality. And again, as we read in the directive, we will be engaged in the process, keeping you informed, keeping the board informed of the process and any concerns and issues we have.
And we'll make sure that you have our contact information so you can send us that feedback. And writing would be great because then we can keep it in our folder and make sure that we're addressing all of those things. So with that, I will give it back to Supervisor Bailey for closing remarks.
Let's give him a hand for. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I want to go back to several things that former Supervisor Bill Clark said. When she speaks, people listen. I don't hear the fat lady sing at this part. I don't hear the fat lady sing. And there are different angles to this enormous problem, different angles. Mr. Hill, thank you for meeting with the board. And Mr. Campbell, I await the results from that discussion because that's a viable solution, opportunity. I hear you, Mr. Colson, about the soil. Part of what's going on with this enormous problem that we have, a lot of stuff is just old. It's just old. And we didn't ask for the coal ash problem. We didn't ask for it. But the reason why, and my sister back with the black shirt on, your name, I'm sorry. You, yes, yes, thank you for your comments. But the reason why I'm having this meeting tonight with the county, in partnership with the county, is because we want to keep you updated on what's going on. And yes, it takes your time. Yes, it does. But you deserve to have an update. You deserve to have your questions answered. And you deserve to have the problem solved. I know that this problem is not going to be resolved overnight, as Ms. Barr just indicated. If it takes 2 more years from the 8, let's take the 2 more years. And we cannot sweep it under the rug. My interest is to protect this community. That's why you voted me into this seat. And I started with the Montclair drainage pipe because that's a sheer example of how I operate as a leader. So I will work through this to get this problem resolved with county staff and with Dominion. That is my promise to you. And to Mr. Campbell, you're welcome to join the task force. And I just want to let you know, when we started this task force, we put it out there for people to join. And I think the people are still there, but I want voices to be heard. I'm not trying to leave anybody out in the process, but we have to work together. We are a community. So thank you for coming and giving us your opinion. To the gentleman in the black and the blue jacket, is it your name again? Mr. Kellum? Thank you for your comments as well. We hear you. We hear you. We appreciate you. We started this problem with Senator Saraville and Delegate Lutorian and Jennifer Carroll Foy. And it took a while for us to get into the General Assembly, to get designations to Dominion to this point. And now we have to go to another point to get it out here. So I appreciate your patience. Just keep praying that people's health are restored and maintained as we go through this process. Please, I need your prayers in that regard. And to the gentleman that says he has me on speed dial, come visit me. I offered you that the last time, you haven't been yet. I need you to come see me. Okay? But this is a big problem. It's an enormous problem. I hear my brother mention Quantico Creek. Our mindsets are empatical, same direction, because that is something that I've talked to Tom and his staff about in terms of that. So we have a lot going on. We have the support of Madam Chair. I appreciate her support in being here and going forward. It's not going to be resolved overnight, but my efforts, my thoughts, with your help, is to move it a little bit faster. It's been going on since 1986. That's a long time, y'all. Montclair Drainage Pipe was 1993. We got that done in 6 months with acting county exec, Eliza Johnson's help, and the former county exec. So we can do this. We can do this together. Communication is important. Engagement is important, so that we can get it resolved. We know that Dominion is big business, but Rebecca said something that was very key: influence. So community influence is important as well with Dominion. So I thank you. Thank you to the staff again for your wonderful skills in this, from the communications department, in helping us send this out online to those who could not be here this evening. We appreciate your questions as well on Streamline. Is it StreamYard? Jake, did I say it right? On Facebook. We appreciate you on Facebook. Thank you. We will continue to have these meetings. If you cannot participate, send someone. Because the last time this room was a little bit full, you know. So thank you for this evening. And stay safe. Keep your mask on, if please, Ms. Barr. And protect yourselves. Yes, Jacob, you have.
I just have one now. I'm sorry. Throughout this, we talked about email information. Most everyone put their email down when they signed in, and we really appreciate that. But that's how we're going to circulate the comments that we've been talking about. So please make sure that your email is on the sign-in sheet outside, and we're going to send out an email blast tomorrow. So thank you so much.
So Jacob, when's our next meeting in terms of the task force?
Next week.
Give me a date, please, sir.
Wednesday, the 22nd.
So Mr. Campbell and Mr. Hill, we expect to see you there.
What time
What time, sir?
is the next?
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Thank you.
And it will be
Virtually.
It'll be virtual. We do that for everyone's safety. Okay? Thank you very much. I bid you adieu.